Hello everyone and welcome back. Let's now see how can we display password validation errors on the client side. Let's imagine that we have submitted a user creation request and we got an error back. Let's now see how the error scenario could be handled here at the level of the client. So if the request was in error, we were simply logging it into the console at this point. What we're going to do now is we are going to take the response in error and we are going to add it here to an errors array that we are going to define as being an array of strings. We are also going to initialize it to the empty array value so that there are no errors initially. And in order to handle the error, we are going to take the errors that we have received from the backend and we are going to assign it here to the this.errors variable. So the errors are available here. This is a HTTP response object. It has things like the status code and more information. It also has an error property where we have the JSON value of the response. That, as we know, is an object with only one property, errors. So we are saving the array of errors here to this array. And now we just have to go to the template and we need to somehow display the errors. So we are going to display the errors here in a red panel above the signup form. For that, let's create here a div just above the form with a couple of classes, messages and messages error. And inside here, we are going to have another div that we are going to call messages container. So this is some generic CSS that would also allow you to display errors, etc. in multiple containers that is already built in this application. So we are going to create here a messages container and inside it we are going to display all the errors. So right now we are only receiving error codes from the backend. Let's start by displaying simply the error codes. Each error code is going to be displayed here in a div. And we are going to be using ng-for to iterate through the list of arrays. So we are going to iterate each error. We are going to say let error of errors. So now we have here the error. And initially we are simply going to display it here to the screen. And also we are only going to display here this panel if there is at least one element in the array. So we are going to do ng-if here and we are going to test for the length property of the array. The problem with the error code here would be that it would not be very helpful to the end user. So we are going to go here to the signup component and we are going to define a map. So the keys of the map will be the error codes and the values will be the error messages that we want to display. So we are going to put in here a very simple map. It's named message per error code. And here we have it. These are the error codes that will be sent from the backend. We can confirm this by checking here the documentation. So these are the error codes that get sent and mapping the error code to a message. And then using this object, we are going to map the error code to a particular message. If you are coding along, you can obtain this map from the GitHub repository so that we can use it directly in our component. So now that we have it here, instead of showing here the error, instead we're going to call the map and we're going to access the property that corresponds to the error, and this will be the user-friendly error message that we have defined. So now at this point we are ready to start displaying errors on the front end. So let's try this out. Let's refresh the application. We will leave here the server log running and let's also open the console so that we can see when an account was correctly created. So we are going to try first here with a password which is only one single letter, let's say T. So this should trigger all three errors. And indeed we have here a HTTP request with a 400 error code. And we have the three error messages that are being displayed here on the screen. Now, we can also complement the server-side password validation policy with some client-side functionality to prevent this password from ever being submitted to the server. It's important to realize that any security protections that are made on the client side are just for improving the user experience, but they do not ensure actual security. Things like password policy or input validation in general should always be repeated again at the server side. At the client side, everything can be bypassed by an attacker, including the password policy. So now let's submit another password. We are going to add a number. Let's see what the result would be. So everything is working as expected. It's just a matter of fixing the length and using one uppercase character. So now this should create a user. Let's see. So we have here user created successfully, and here in the console we can see that the user was correctly created in the database as expected. So at this point in the application, we have stored the passwords in the database in a secure form, in a hashed and salted form, with a good password policy. So now we are ready to implement the session management or the login functionality of the application. Let's see how can we create a session for the user so that we can identify that indeed the user has access to the data. Let's also protect here the lessons data, because right now, even though the user is created on the database, we are still not using that information to secure the data. So that's what we will be doing in the next few lessons.